Another episode here of Confessions of a Street Broker. This is the final draft. We've actually done a rough draft on this before, actually. Yep. But this is going to be really interesting, man. This is a really interesting guy. Me and him have grown to be pretty good buds here lately and have similar paths. And this is a really unique story and something that I think everybody's going to get a real big kick out of. But today with me is Mr. Summitt Hogue, the managing partner of Growe. So, Summitt, what's going on, man?
You know, man, everything all at once. Yeah, it's all good. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, you know, Summitt and I are both ex-Texas Tech football players. So that's kind of how we kind of connected. Our circles were in the same place. And it's kind of funny. I think I just sent you an email one day. I was like, hey, man, let's just go to lunch. Like, you played football at Tech. I played football at Tech. We were both in commercial real estate and industrial. Let's just go have lunch. And then even funnier after that is after I got out of lunch, I texted Devin, who I played with, who you knew as going to his football camps. And and I was like, hey, you're somebody. He's like, oh, man, I forgot to tell you, come to this meeting tomorrow. So then the next day we were having lunch again at an ex-players meeting. And so that was kind of cool. And that kind of started our friendship from there on. And so it's been fun. But let's just kind of hear your story, man. Where'd you grow up? And, let's just hear it. So,
grew up in Lubbock. So Brownfield is where my dad's a farmer. So I grew up in Wolfforth, and then we would drive down to the farm all the time down in Brownfield. And cotton farmer, just pounding away. Hardest place in the world, I think, to grow anything. Just a desert, and it's dry. It doesn't rain, and a lot of prayers out there. But wonderful place to grow up, and we've been farming the same land out there for over 100 years. So
oh, wow.
Pretty cool to grow up out there. And my older brother is actually farming with my dad. So I kind of saw that as I'm coming through growing up, and I was kind of like, all right, so Stetson's already farming with dad. There's not really a whole lot of room for me to jump in there and start using the same tractors and jump on some of this. So I was kind of like, well, being the second son, I got to go find something else to do.
Yeah.
So, I went to Texas Tech, and wild story there. I was a late bloomer. So like after high school, I played like 6 high school football games as a starter. And then I broke my collarbone.
Yeah.
And then, so I didn't really have any film, but I knew I wanted to keep playing. So I went up to the football facility and got Coach Tuberville to just let me run a 40-yard dash for him.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I'm coming to Texas Tech either way. I really want to be on this football team. I don't have any film to show you, but just let me run a 40-yard dash. So he miraculously let me run that. Got on his golf cart, drove it out to the 40-yard line, the practice facility, and let me run a 40-yard dash. And then he looked at it and he looked at me and like I was crazy, but then he says, go run that again.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, yes, sir. I went out, lined up, run it again. You can imagine the adrenaline. I'm sitting here like, and my dream growing up in Lubbock is to play for Texas Tech, because that's like that's the biggest team out there. The biggest stage we got out there. And I ran it again, and he goes, "All right, go pick out your locker. I'll put your name on the board." And I'll never forget that, because it was just crazy to walk back in the facility, and now I'm giving my phone number and whatever to this player development guy, and next thing you know, he's like, "Okay, you need to get scheduled to go get your physical and to go get your sickle cell test and go get all these things." I was like, what is all? I don't even know what all this is.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I'm in Hawaii for my just summer vacation with my whole family, and they called, and Coach Lutz, I still have the voicemail on my phone. He's like,
how funny.
He's like, "Hey, Summitt, we're going to bring you in early." I was all excited. I'm like, oh, they want me early? That means like, they might, they see something in me.
Yeah.
No. They needed a body to get demolished is what they needed. They needed me to get out there and just scout team it up and get my head taken off every day. That's what they needed.
So was this, where were you at? Did you go, you were a senior in high school when you went and ran your 40-yard dash for Coach Tuberville. And then this is the summer going into two-a-days.
Summer going into my freshman year of college.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was just on family vacation, and I flew home early from Hawaii thinking I was going in, and they wanted to see what I could do. No, they just needed a warm body out there that was willing to come just get his head taken off by all these guys. And
this is before school started?
Yeah. So summer.
Just so people know what's interesting about that, when you understand when people are walking on somewhere, not everybody gets to start with the team in the summer. Now, they've actually changed that rule in the NCAA. They just changed it. But, we would have, I didn't get to come in the very beginning. I went to practice, but I wasn't allowed per the NCAA to practice until the first day of school. It was the stupidest thing in the world. I don't know.
Well, that's why he said show up first day of classes, because I couldn't come in to 2 days in the summer.
Okay.
But then they called and said, we're going to bring you in early. That's why I was on a vacation.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I can't start for a couple more weeks.
So that means they did, in a way, they wanted you, but they saw something in you too that this guy can come down and fly and run down on some stuff and actually give guys a good look, right? So
yeah, my first day I was out there, I'm running down on scout kickoff, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make a name for myself out here. So I'm running down as fast as I humanly possibly can on scout kickoff.
Yeah.
Okay, they're just kind of running through reps, but I didn't really understand that, you run and you kind of fit up, but you don't. And I put the crown of my helmet on the chin of Keelan Hubert, and he's a middle linebacker, and just knocked him on his back. I mean, I was running full speed.
Yeah.
Knocked him on his back, and he got absolutely reamed for that. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm feeling good. But then they go, run it back. And I was like, oh, here we go. I got to do that again. But now he's ready. That I ran down, and he hit me so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, he made a statement right there. For the next week, I wore a blue jersey and a cowboy collar because he hit me so hard it rung my bell and busted my neck. I was like, okay, all right, I'm good.
This is a little different. So that's what, man, I remember one of my first practices, I was running scout team defensive tackle, and I came through unblocked, and I was like, oh no. I could just sense I was fixing to get trap blocked. And this guy named Chris Whitney, he was all Big 12 offensive lineman. He was coming down and trap blocked me. And I feel like he hit me, and I literally just did a flip like this. And I was like, welcome.
Yeah.
This is different.
Yeah. So that's funny you say that, because I served that whole red shirt year just getting beat up every day, and going through those 5 a.m. workouts and doing all that. It's really designed to break you, right? Guys quit. A lot of guys quit.
Yeah.
I'll never forget Coach Walker. It's 5 a.m. We're pushing boards. It's frozen outside. And he's screaming, God can't help you now. Just stuff like that where you're just like, dude, what? I mean, 5 a.m. I'm throwing up on on this turf field out here. Is crazy. But then the first game I was ever eligible to play, we were playing Northwestern State, halftime. We're beating the brakes off of them. And Coach Tuberville goes, hey, I'm going to let you run a kickoff the second half. I'm like, whoa. I haven't practiced anything. I don't even know where to line up. What am I even doing?
Yeah.
Well, one, he told me to line up in the wrong spot because he's the head coach and doesn't really know all the And I line up in the wrong spot, and I run over to the right spot, and I'm all, nervous. There's 60,000 people in the stands in Lubbock. And you just see this line of guys go running down, and there's this one dude just out front, little bitty guy, but just running out front of everybody like, oh, man, he's kind of moving. What they didn't tell me is somebody is on the other side of the ball is there to just absolutely try to take your head off. And all he said was go to the ball, run as fast as you can. Okay, I can do that. And dude, this dude comes from the side, and it was like a blind side. He was hiding behind the wedge, and then he popped out, hit me on the ear hole, and I looked like a blown out tire. Boom, landed on my back, did a flip, got up, and then the dude, the guy caught the ball and ran right into me, and I tackled him. So the whole stadium goes ooh, and then crazy. I ran down 3 times that game and ended up getting the tackle all 3 times.
Oh, wow.
So Coach Tuberville made me player of the game, and I never missed a game after that.
That's awesome, man.
Just special teams and in and out sometimes at nickel or outside linebacker or something like that. It was a lot of fun, man. Time of my life.
Yeah. I mean, it's you look at the statistics, not a lot of people get to do that. And that's cool. You got to experience that. And, I could see a lot of guys in y'all's class. Y'all are all still buds and all that stuff. And, that's what's been great about those player meetings now. Like me and all my old buds are all getting together now. So that's what's really cool that, our friend Will Culpepper, and he was my teammate, and he's done a great job of just, taking over that Double T varsity club and just keeping everybody together and keep getting everybody back. And so that's been fun, man. I've I connected with my roommates that I haven't talked to in years, and now we talk all the time. And, so there's been a lot of good things coming out of that program after the fact too, of not just being there. So that's pretty exciting. So you run through, you get, you get to the end of your football career and you're like, well, this ain't going to the next level, but it was a good run. And so what's next for Summitt at that point?
Yeah. So pretty clear that I wasn't going to be a farmer. I mean, my degree was in like agricultural communications. And then I pretty much did, which means I can talk to plants, which is cool. Actually, I thought it was hilarious. They even have that major, agricultural communications. I don't even know what that means, but and then I did most of the classes that I actually paid attention to were the viticulture, so study of wine grapes and stuff. So my dad and I built a vineyard, and I thought, okay, I'm going to run a vineyard and I'm going to be a farmer. And we planted the vineyard. I just spent that whole summer, out there planting grapes and taking care of them and everything. And the one part, I guess I skipped class that day, but it takes 2 years before a vine actually produces any grapes. So I was going, well, crap, Dad, what am I going to do for 2 years before I actually have some grapes to harvest out here? And so that was God telling me, hey, bud, you gotta get out of here and go find something else to do. So I packed up a Penske truck and drove to Dallas because it's the closest city. And I thought, well, I'll figure something else out there, I guess. And my uncle, I talked to my uncle about it, and he was saying, man, if there's anything that I would do going back, I would get into commercial real estate. Like that's the business to be in. I thought, what's commercial real estate? Is that billboards, like commercials on real estate? I don't know. I grew up on it. I never even heard that term before. And I quickly realized what it was. I got out here and he introduced me to Kyle Jacobs that owns Rubicon. Yeah. And they took me on over there, and we, it's one of those, how commercial real estate is when you first get in as a broker. It's like, hey, bud, here's a desk, phone, a computer, and that's your market, and good luck. Yeah.
You were a farmer before. Go farm this now.
Right. Now get out there and go walk in and go win some deals. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to say to these people. Yeah. And there's not really a whole lot of training in real estate, especially in commercial real estate. It's probably one of the toughest businesses to break into, I think, because you're either born into it, or you battle through the trenches like I was going through at that point, right? Like just, hey, 100% commission and good luck, right? You're going to run up some credit card debt. You're going to say a lot of prayers. But I grew up that way, kind of like growing up, just like totally being like, you know what? God's going to provide, and I'm just going to keep doing what I need to do and stick my nose to the ground and I'm going to make it happen. Yeah. And my dad would always say, if it is to be, it's up to me, and I just ring in my head like, okay, it's up to me. I mean, I can go make it happen, so I'm just going to get out there and go do it. And so I spent a year out there in the streets of Grand Prairie, just pounding the pavement. Yeah. And one of the first clients I won out there is actually hilarious because, Corby Hotchkiss. So I walked in the door, and the guy thought that I was Corby because Corby and I look alike. Yeah. And he thought that I was Corby, so he took my meeting and like sat down with me. We sat there and talked, and he realized like halfway through the meeting, oh, this isn't the guy this isn't my guy. But he kept talking to me, and it was a good conversation. And that night, one of my buddies is a Texas country singer, Josh Abbott band. Yeah. And Josh. Yeah. And I said, hey, Josh is playing at the Grand Prairie horse races tonight. You want to come with me? And he was sitting there like, well, I'm not going to tell this guy that he's not, yeah, I'll go with you. Yeah. So I take him up there with me and introduce him to a bunch of people, and he had the time of his life up there. And
that's cool.
Next thing you know, he Corby, he called Corby and was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna go with this guy." And Corby was so mad at me for that. And I was like, dude, I just got lucky, man. I don't even know what to tell you. The guy thought that I was you.
Yeah.
Pretty funny. Custom Metal Products was the company.
Yeah.
And pretty funny deal. But yeah, so I did that for a year out there, and that's what it was. It was winning one-off deals like that. You can't build a life like that. And I got pretty tired of fighting so hard to win these, and these little deals like that too. They take so much time and they're so hard to work on sometimes. Right. I was just like, man, like this is kind of a beating. And so I thought, there's going to be a different way of doing this. There's just so many different people. There's so many people in this industry that are doing it the exact same way. Yeah. I kept running into the street brokers, like the guys that have been out there for 20 years. I mean, like Michael Stanzel, that dude has been out there in Grand Prairie longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
He's got some clients out there that they've been together longer than I've been alive. I'm like, I'm not, how am I supposed to beat him?
Yeah.
I don't have a different value add. I don't even know. And on top of that, I'm trying to get this guy to help me or to hire me to make a multi-million-dollar decision for his business. And he's owned his business longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
Like,
you're probably hoping to find the relationships that they just screwed up. Right. Or they forgot.
About.
And
which is bottom feeding, right? And I'm not a bottom feeder. I didn't want to live that life. I was like, I'm not going to get out here and just like do all these little crappy deals in these little janky old buildings. And I just felt like, you know what, I got to figure out another way to do this. And frankly, they one of my mentors, he said, Summitt, doing it that way and sticking to it, it's going to take you 10 years and you keep doing it and you'll make $1 million by the time you're 10 years. Yeah. And I was like, man, I don't have 10 years. I gotta figure this out sooner rather than later. So then I pivoted and said, you know what, I'm going to focus on an industry rather than a geographical market. And luckily I was at a company like Rubicon who was very, just it's pretty sink or swim. So they're not really telling you what you can and can't do and in your face every day, right? You can kind of, hey, if you're doing deals, you're doing deals. You know what I mean? So I had a little bit of freedom. So I started kind of piecing together the model that I have today. And once that started to really ignite, I realized, you know what? Hey, I can make a full business out of this. Like I don't just need to be a broker at just working for a firm. Like I can build a firm around this. Yeah. This is a model that I can build a full throttle machine around. And so then I left there and started Growe. Was looking at 3PLs to kind of start this new model. Was that your first thing you thought of, or was there any other chasing maybe low coverage sites or anything like that? Or was it just like 3PL? Like what drew you to 3PL and saying this is the path I want to take? Good question. So basically the way that I was thinking about it is the only way to have a profitable long-term real estate business is to do a lot of business with the same people. Right. And so what I realized was these 3PLs, one, they're the largest takers of space. That's not unknown. Everybody knows that, like, when you look at the list of different industries, like that industry takes a lot of warehouse space. And a 3PL came into GSW and signed a lease in a CB repped building. So CB repped the landlord and CB repped the tenant. And I looked at it. I knew that the two guys that were on the listing were the listing brokers, right? But then when I looked at the deal, when I got the comp, one of those guys represented the tenant, and the other guy represented the landlord, and they had a glass, door between them. You know what I mean? And I was sitting there going, "How in the world did that happen?" That tenant has no idea that they did not get the best deal. Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact. Like looking at the deal, where they landed, like. I could have definitely served them a lot better in that situation. Yeah. The landlord won, right? Yeah. And why did the landlord win? Well, the brokers, they do a lot of business with that landlord. They don't care about the tenant. They care about the landlord because that's who they do a lot of business with. Yeah. So that's where I started to go, you know what? I've got to do a lot of business with the same people, but it's not going to be a landlord. So how do I do that? Well, that 3PL also has buildings in different markets. So I'm going to start working. I'm going to see what happens if I try to chase the 3PL business. And so I can do a lot of business with these guys where I'm putting them in buildings all over the country, if that makes sense. So that's when things really started to ignite, because then I thought, well, how am I going to win, a 3PL based in Akron, Ohio or Miami? How do I win their business?
Yeah.
That's where things got kind of crazy. I started kind of piecing things together and figured out how to get them real excited. And next thing you know, I'm flying out and they're rolling out the red carpet for me. And we're, it's more of a conversation of welcoming, and they're asking me if they can get me coffee. And, the whole situation is like, totally different than when you're walking in somebody's front door in GSW and they slam the door in your face, or you got to go up the dock door and try to sneak in the back and get some information from somebody.
Yeah.
Totally different experience.
So 3PLs, in my experience, I have one 3PL I rep. I've repped them for 15 years. But when I look at the profile of a 3PL, the owner is usually more of an individual entrepreneur.
Right.
And I think, my opinion of why you have been so successful, one thing I think that's made you successful in that is that you don't have to have a CBRE business card to win that business.
Right.
That's probably the value proposition, is that you don't have that business card and you're an entrepreneur too. And I think that's where, because there's not a bunch of, I'm sure there's some bigger 3PLs that are like, oh, we have to have JLL rep us nationally.
Yeah,
because
the XPOs, GXOs, all these massive corporations. That's not who I want to work with anyway.
Yeah.
I want the blue collar guys
Yeah.
that started it out of one warehouse. They're building their business. And then I go to work every day to help them grow that business. So I named the company Growe because, I kept saying that over and over. When you grow, we grow, right?
Yeah.
And I kept saying things like, I'm going to feel like your chief growth officer that you don't pay $1 to, right? So I get to do all these different things for you. And because I specialize in an industry, right? And then I even take it a step further into a size of a company in that industry, right? Mid-market, growth-minded 3PLs, okay?
Yeah.
So what that means is if you got one building and you're going to stay in one building, or you might go get another building in your area, if the right deal comes along, probably not for us, right? You got to be if you're going to work with Growe, you got to be a growth-minded 3PL that is always down to take a deal, sign a building in another market, and go, go, go. And you're obviously pushing your customers to grow, and you want to continue to take more space. That's how I grow my business, and I help you grow your business. So, really zoned in on that little niche right there.
So that's, what's really cool about that is like you've gone from sub-market specialization, which is what a lot of guys here in DFW do. A lot of guys in commercial real estate do that across the country.
Right.
And you pretty much took, I still call it sub-market specialization. You just took it on maybe it's not sub-market, but you took a market of industrial. You refined industrial down to this certain thing, and like, I'm going to be the best at this, versus like I was the best guy in Brook Hollow when I was there. You know what I mean? And so that's pretty genius. And in a way, I've seen some things when I look back on my career. I'm like, man, like I used to do all these iOS sites. Like I'm talking 10. Before the acronym was around, I was like, that's why that's all I buy for the most part. Because when I would list them, like. I was telling somebody that I took a listing the other day because it was a shop on acreage. And I was like, I don't take listings anymore, but like this, it's for sale. I'm like, kidding me? I have this done in a week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why a lot of our buying activities trend towards those kind of buildings, because I know they transact quickly because they're limited. But, I look back and I kind of go, man, I should have just dialed in more on that stuff. I'd have been the king of it by now, you know? So, but I think that's so interesting that you had the foresight to see that, hey, I don't want to be bumping into this guy and bumping into this guy. Like, you're the only person that I've heard of that kind of does, that specialization, So I'm sure the bigger brokerages have some guy that says he's that guy, but he's not winning your business, and you're not chasing his. And
the thing about it is I have gotten so deep in the weeds in the 3PL space that like, I can look at I'm basically a full on consultant for these guys in a lot of scenarios, right? I'll sit down and we'll talk about every problem they have. We dig into the P&L. We're digging into different customers and how different things are going, the operation and the flow of the building. It's so in depth that like it'd be really hard for another broker to walk in there and know as much about their business as I do, or my team does at this point because of how much time we spend in there. I bought a 3PL in Houston mainly so that I could really learn and get deeper and deeper into the weeds, right? Because the more that I learn and know about it, and the more that I understand the problems that they face, because I'm facing them, then the better off that I can serve them, the better I can serve them. You know what I mean?
So, no, that's what I always felt. That was something that gave me such a great skill set transitioning into brokerage, was that I was running a steel company at the time. I was like, I know
Mercer Metals, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I would walk in and
I cold called Mercer Metals out in Grand Prairie. I walked in and they were like, our owner is like owns a brokerage firm, right? And I was like, nope, oops. And definitely I won't leave a card here. It's not even gonna waste a card on this one.
And so but that was that was unique, right? Like you can walk in now and the skill set of what that 3PL operator needs, and that's what I would use it. But hey, look, I'm asking you to move your facility. Guess what? I've done it. Right. I've lived it. I've made payroll. So I think that's genius for you to even take that next step and buy a 3PL, operate it. And I mean, the pitch is totally different, right? It's like, hey, I'm coming in here as your peer in a way. Right. Like I can tell you here's some challenges we face. You know what I mean? Like you can collaborate. So that's really interesting. I love that approach. I think it takes the ultimate entrepreneur. So you come up with this idea, though. You're still at Rubicon. So what was the transition to Growe? Like, hey, I'm going to step out on my own and do this. How that all happen?
Yeah, wild situation there. But essentially, I said, hey guys, like let's restructure some of this stuff, because what I've got going in this model that I've got is really, really working, and I created it myself. So you guys have been great. It's you've got the system set up here. Things are processing fine. Everything's cool. But let's just restructure, splits and restructure some of these things of how this is going to go, because, this is obviously starting to really be lucrative. And I think that, I created a lot of it. So let's make it worth it for me to stay here. Yeah. Right. And we couldn't come to terms on how that was going to work out. So I looked at a few other real estate firms, and you get the, hey, here's a check and come over here and we'll do this and we'll do that for you. And that was a wild experience, kind of meeting with different firms and figuring out who's going to do what. And my buddy signed a huge contract in the NFL, and I just remember thinking, like, how can they pay you that much, right? And he was like, dude, he goes, think about the guy that writes my checks. Yeah. So I was sitting there like, if they can pay him that much money and they know they're going to make that much more off of him, then that's why all these guys are writing me these checks and trying to get me to come here and here and here. I was like, you know what? I'm still young. Worst case scenario, if I go start my own company, if it doesn't work out, I could still just go back to being a broker for one of these other guys and be fine. Right. Yeah. I've got clients. It's just, just see what happens. And so that's when I ultimately decided, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself here. I'm just going to swing for the fences and see what happens. And I'm going to go start my own company.
Smart move. It's worked out for those NFL owners too.
It has.
So, well, that's great, man. So when did you found Growe? What month, what year?
It was August of 21, I believe.
So there's another part of your story that I know that I want you to tell too, because I think this is maybe probably the most critical thing in being able to be an entrepreneur, being able to run a successful business on a day-to-day basis, is I think your relationship with your wife. I know that, she supported you through all this, I mean, it's tough to make a decision like that. Like, like my wife, man, we've gone through all of it, and I've seen people that have not had good relationships with their spouses, and that's like a killer.
Oh, and that's your Achilles heel right there.
It is. And so I don't know. Once you talk about that, I think that's kind of an interesting part of your.
Yeah. pretty wild story there. So it was actually, I started Growe in August of 2020 because it's been 3.5 years now at this point. Heat of COVID, baby on the way, all of those things. And my wife is kind of like, hey, are you sure about this? Because, we're in the middle of a pandemic. You're wearing a mask everywhere you go right now.
Yeah.
We got a baby coming. Like, this is kind of wild. We just went through that freeze where the whole world shut down in Texas for a year or for 2 weeks or whatever. It felt like forever. Yeah. And anyway, prior to that, like when I first got into the industry, you go through that first year where you're not making any money at all. Well, we'd go to dinner and she would slide her credit card to me under the table. And, so we're with friends, right? And, it looked like I paid for dinner, but my credit card would have definitely bounced.
Yeah.
So she knew it. So she slides her credit card to me and she paid for dinner, but it looked like I did. Things like that where she was just right there rooting me on. One of my first clients that I ever won, she would go cold calling with me. Like she'd jump in the truck and I'd be like, man, I'm so lonely. It's lonely going out there by yourself and just getting your teeth kicked in all day. Yeah. And she went out there with me. And so she would stay in the truck because I'd go walk in these random buildings and I'd come out and tell her, that guy told me to pound sand. And this lady threw a pin at me. And this guy, she's like, golly, how do you do this? It's crazy. But like getting back in the truck and her being there always to build me back up, gave me all the courage I needed to go back into the next building, And one of the first ones was Savvy Discount Furniture. And I came out all excited. I was like, I just walked past the lady at the front desk and like I was supposed to be there and walked all the way back to the main guy's office. And he told me he had a broker, but then I told him, I went through the whole thing and she was all excited. I was excited. And I showed up at 7 a.m. the next morning and dropped off a big tour book for the guy. And anyway, won his business, ended up moving him into a building right on 35. And we drive by it all the time on 35. And we always both look over and go, man, that was that deal that, man, I was in the truck and we were talking about it. It was like one of the best memories I have with her.
I think that's so cool, man. I think that's, I'll tell you what, anybody trying to do anything in life, everybody has all these hacks. I'll tell you one hack, you better have the right woman. You better have the right partner with you.
Amen, man.
Amen. So if you don't, it's me and my wife, we went through a series, we had an issue at Mercer Metals where we had a big lawsuit go down with a partner. And we were about bankrupt. We just built our house in Prosper and we go bankrupt fighting this lawsuit almost. And she never wavered, man. She's like, all right, well, what do we got to do this week? Then she was coming to the office with me every day and all those things, man, we pulled out of it. So, learned a lot.
That's beautiful.
So anyways, I just want to bring that up because I think that's a really important thing for younger guys out there and younger people wanting to try to build something. You better have that side of the house right because I've seen people go through divorces, stuff like that. And man, it wrecks them. You can't it's hard to recover.
If you ain't right at home, you can't be right at the office either. Yeah. And when the ebbs and flows of this business, man, there's highs, and there are lows.
That's right.
I come home sometimes and I just I did everything right. I did everything that I could do.
Yeah.
And then somehow this happened. It's an external factor and the deal's dead. And, we were banking on that for something and we were all excited. And then, she just wraps me up as like, hey, you're going to get the next one. Just go get the next one. Yeah. What do you, don't get, she doesn't let me get down. She's always like, hey, if there's anybody in the world that can bounce back from something like that, you can.
Yeah.
Hell, go revive that deal. Just go figure out how to make it happen. You can do it.
Yeah.
I've seen you do it before. Go do it again, and you're like, all right, you go back into the next day and attack it, right? And that's powerful.
Yeah.
For sure.
No.
Definitely a blessing.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So you start Growe in August of 2020. And you're already working on this program of kind of really much. You do deals all across the United States.
Yeah.
Do you do deals in Mexico and Canada yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mexico and Canada. I'm actually going to Europe this summer and I was on a call actually before I got here with a guy in the UK, a 3PL base there, just starting to really kind of build those relationships and stuff as we continue to grow because there's a lot of different things that can come from having a network of groups of 3PLs over in Europe and the States because there's so many things that those guys can work together on.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to try to be a lot of the glue for that, the liaison between that.
Yeah. That's awesome. So how was it going to develop another market? What was your strategy on that? Like, how would you pick a town to go start cultivating in? How are you finding, did you just know there was 3PLs out there? Was it based on the AFC schedule?
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. Quite a few of my clients came from going to Chiefs games, staying on Monday and pounding the industrial market there and just finding every 3PL that I could. And, I'd set meetings, as many as I could. I'd know, hey, me and my buddies were going to go to this game in New England. I'm going to set all these meetings in Boston, up in Massachusetts. And we flew up there, met a bunch of guys, got in the door with some 3PLs, went to a game, and also got some clients. My biggest client is a company called eShipping out of Kansas City. Yeah. And done about 18 buildings with them over the last 5-6 years. Yeah. And I was at a Chiefs game in Kansas City, found a 3PL up there, and set a meeting with the COO, and he sat down with me, and rest is history. They just became, it was kind of perfect timing too. They were already a big in the asset light world where they didn't have any of their own buildings yet, but it was perfect timing. I mean, they were sitting there just about to blow up and go take buildings everywhere. And I happened to just, stroll right on in. Hey, how you doing? This is what I do. And they were like, well, actually that's exactly what we need right now. And then bam, we just took off across the United States. It's been wild.
Timing, man. Yep. Timing and showing up on real estate day sometimes is very critical. But, also showing up and being the guy that does that exact thing is huge. So that's pretty cool. No, let's see. So, okay, this probably happened back when you were down in GSW floating around, but what was like the worst or most awkward cold call you ever made?
Oh, man. I have to think about that. There was the worst are the ones where it's like the person at the front desk, just like you're the third or fourth broker that day. Yeah. Because like that's the reality of GSW. I mean, a lot of these street brokers in Dallas, I mean, they pound the streets, right? Yeah. And I don't even remember what kind of business it was, but I just remember walking in and this old lady, she's sitting there at that front desk, and she knew the second she saw me, she knew I was a real estate broker. And she stood up, and she's the one who threw the pin at me. She throws the pin at me. She's like, "Can't you read? It says no solicitation." And she's yelling and throwing like, "Get out of here. You're the third broker this week," or whatever. And get out of here, yelling at me. And I was like, whoa, I'll leave a card. She's, "Don't you dare leave a card in here." And I was just like, wow, this lady she must have had something else go on, and I was the easiest guy to take it out on. Yeah. But I got back in the truck right there and was just sitting there like, man, what am I doing? I got old ladies throwing pins at me. I'm like, I feel like I'm selling, silverware and knives door to door or something like that. I'm like, this is crazy. What am I doing?
You're literally there to talk about probably the owner's complete net worth. Right. Because the business is probably not worth anything.
Right. Well, I'm there to talk about like, hey, here's how I'm going to save you money as a tenant rep broker to make sure you get a good deal on your next, because I know their lease is coming up. You know what I mean? But you're blue-haired lady at the front threw a pin at me, and now you're going to do a renewal direct with this landlord, and they're probably going to hit you over the head because you didn't have anybody coming in there to help you.
They're going to fleece you, man. So that's funny, man. It's a very, very common thing for what we do.
It's also pretty awkward sometimes whenever you can't get in the front door, so you sneak in the back door, meaning just jump right up a dock door and go walking through the warehouse and sneak your way through avoid the guy that looks like he's going to kick you out. You kind of, before you get to the head honcho's office. I mean, I would literally like sneak through the racking and like get into the office and find the big office that's got the deer heads in it, that looks like this guy runs the business. And I'd walk in his office, and I didn't let anybody else try to stop me. And, there was a couple times where I got caught, and that guy is like, what are you doing in my warehouse? Get out of here, and they're yelling at you and stuff. But that's pretty funny.
That happens. So, well, there's another story I want you to tell, because I think this is just genius. Your Amazon box idea. Oh, so
yeah. So yeah, me and my wife, we do, and a lot of my friends actually too. We'll buy products online. Actually try to stay away from Amazon as much as we can, but we'll buy it online. And when it comes to your house, the return label is who their 3PL is. It's where the box came from, right?
Yeah.
Where the inventory sits. So if we swipe up on an Instagram ad, buy it, comes to the house, and I look up the address, it's Salt Lake City. I look up the address on LinkedIn or on CoStar. It's XYZ Logistics.
Yeah.
Then I'll reach out to that owner of that brand and say, hey, I know you use XYZ Logistics, and we sit there and we talk a little bit about them. And if they're good, they introduce me to them. If they're bad, then I take them to another 3PL.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea of what that is, right? It's like the brands put themselves in front of us, and then you just got to get creative, man. Just got to get creative to figure out like how to get guys on the phone and have a meaningful conversation.
Genius way to reverse engineer things. You're starting at the end of the process to go back and figure out how to solve the beginning of it for those guys. I think that's genius.
And sometimes it's like, hey, this took 3 days to get to me. I mean, do you ship is it 3 days for most of your customers to get your products? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I think maybe it's, I'm like, listen, you got to have 2-day ground shipping if you want to compete.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh, how do I do that? I'm like, well, let me tell you. And then I get on a call and I break it all down for them, show them how they can set up their entire supply chain and how I can help them do it. Yeah. And I do it for free.
Yeah.
And they go, wow, how can you do this for free? Are you sure? I'm like, no, listen, I'm a real estate broker.
Yeah.
And I can do all these things for free because helping you helps me and it helps them. And it creates a win-win-win-win-win situation.
Yeah.
So
that's I think the other thing too is like you also pair brands with other 3PLs. So like you can actually help them take out their need for bid, essentially, right? Like, how unique is that? Like,
there's people that do that as their full business, right?
Yeah.
And I kept seeing those people doing it as their full business, and I partner with a lot of them.
Yeah.
But then they're, I mean, at the end of the day, I can do that for free, and everybody else is getting fees and baked in fees for this and that, and I can do it for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Just give me the 10-rep assignment,
Right. So, I mean, from the brand's perspective, it's like if I get the brand to hire me, right, then we go out to a few different 3PLs, well, somebody's going to win it. It's a good deal for the brand because they sit there and they go, man, you saved me a ton of time, and I know these 3 are really good fits, right? So it just depends on culture and price.
Yeah. And
then they select somebody and move in, and next thing you know, that guy's closer to needing a bigger warehouse.
And I guess it might happen both ways, but do 3PLs, do they just go take down a block of space if they get a cheap deal and hope to fill the building, or do they?
Sometimes.
Okay.
But it depends on the market.
Yeah.
We had a guy, I was just at breakfast on this last Saturday with a guy out of Chicago, and he took a 500,000 foot building in Houston, didn't have one client, just took the building down and was like, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
And some guys are like, no way I would ever do that. Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys are, dedicated operations, or they have an anchor client, and they'll go take, like the Legends Way guys, just put them in, it's a 730,000 foot building down in Midlothian. Mm-hmm. Well, we took 500 of it, and we're going to roll in some new customers, and then they're going to roll in 2 of their buildings, consolidate. But the reality is, and this is one of the value adds too, is like I go really try to figure out, where can I set you up where you can take a certain amount of space but have plenty of room for you to grow, right? Because 3PLs, what they're known for, man, they'll go get into, if you can get them into a 500,000 foot building and they take 150 of it, but they don't build a wall, they will sell into that thing.
Yeah.
If they've got it readily available and all they got to do is sign an amendment, right?
Yeah.
So I always set our 3PLs up with or at least really try, depending on the market, to set them up where they can do that. So we start in the size they need right now, and then we set them up where they can grow. So Legends Way will end up taking that whole 730,000 feet. We got a roofer on it and a lot of protections. Obviously, if somebody comes along tomorrow, then they're going to lose it. But at least they have the opportunity
to lose it. So
right, they have the option, and they can say yes or no. But at least they got themselves the time to go really sell into the balance of the space.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So that's very forward thinking for them too. You're like, hey, look, this building's 700, take the 500. Let's take a roofer on the 200 next door.
Yep.
You know, and just grow into the thing. Well, so Growe is growing up a little bit now, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're moving to your new office.
Yeah. So we're gonna roll into Lincoln Center now. You know, I've been really tight about that. We went from my house to the 19th hole at our country club, and then went from there to Spaces, and then from there to my buddy's warehouse because he just had a bunch of extra offices. So we just set up shop in a warehouse for a year or two, and then we moved to a little, you know, neighborhood office building right by my house so that I could, because we just had another baby. So I wanted to be close to my wife, be able to help with the kids. But, you know, now it's time. Hey, we're really catching some steam. It's time to grow the team. I'm really focused on getting into this new office and recruiting some veteran brokers, right? Get some guys that hey, look, you've been out there pounding the streets. You know, your pathway to the top is through a lot of guys that are not going anywhere. You know what I mean? A lot of these big corporate 3PL or corporate real estate firms, it's like, you know, some of the guys that are the leaders there have been doing it for years, and there's just no pathway up, right? Yeah. Or you're at another small real estate firm and you're sitting there going, man, I'm tired of just pounding the streets, making a couple $100,000 a year. You know, I want to really go make some money, and you want to try something different. Because I can take somebody that knows how to run a real estate deal and train them on how we do what we do, and I could create some monsters that way. Yeah. But the problem has been for me is that everybody that I bring in, you know, has either been from another industry or they've been out of college or something like that. And I tell you, the two guys that I got with me right now, Cash and Jet, they are some dogs. So I got some guys they're some animals. So I got really lucky with them. They're going to really do well. But I'm trying to add to that, right? If I can get 4 or 5 other guys, we're going to be moving at a very fast pace.
It's awesome. Well, as you start building that out too, maybe you start transitioning some of those larger accounts that, you know, are using the bigger brokerages, but man, like, you know, I don't know. I think there's a lot of value you can add that those guys can't, you know. So you're moving to Lincoln Center. So you're doing some construction, so let's talk about this. You know, so we were talking about this before we started here, but there's being the broker, and then there's being an owner of a business, and it stretches you, you know. So right now you're probably, you know, you're going furniture shopping.
Dude, it's honestly, and I was warned about this too. You know, they're like, hey, you don't realize all the things you got to deal with day to day about, you know, running the firm and also digging up business and running your operation with your clients and making sure you're still serving them. And for the first 2 years, really wasn't that big a deal because it was just me and 1 or 2 other guys, and we were just kind of rolling, right? Yeah. And it really, I didn't really have a whole lot that we were doing. Yeah. But now I'm really starting to build out the firm, right? So it's taken, you know, you gotta get your real estate attorney, you gotta have a general business attorney, you gotta have your employee whatever attorney, and then CFO and marketing, and you know, you look up and you're like, holy cow, I was in meetings all day, but only half of what I was doing was digging up new business and working with clients. The rest of it was all the minutia of running this operation, you know what I mean? So it definitely does start to really build where you look up and you're like, man, not only do I have 2 kids, so I have to do, you know, double the revenue with half the time because of my kids. Well, now I got to double that revenue in half the time of that because I'm trying to run a business, be a dad and a husband, and then also serve my clients at the same time. So you got to do a whole heck of a lot with a whole lot less time. Yeah. No, that's definitely it, man. It's, you know, I spend a lot of time with our team members individually. You know, Will's out there doing a lot of the business development. I don't really do that much anymore. You know, I could totally go do it and
be very successful at it. And, it's something I want to get back into. I love going and meeting with brokers now and telling them my story and, hey, I want to buy buildings, like,
right.
and all that stuff. But, on my side of the house too, it's like, now I have to constantly raise capital too. So I'm always out having those meetings and, giving the pitch on the next thing that we're doing and the next vertical of what we're trying to, put money into. And so there's always, and then, you're having marketing meetings, you're having accounting meetings, you're having, we have property management meetings, there's all these things. And so
marketing is the worst, man. I'm so bad at marketing.
I'm very fortunate because this lady right here, she is just freaking badass at it. So it, I just have to kind of tell her what I want and it comes back perfect every time. So
yeah, good for you, man. I gotta find one of those.
Yeah. So, we've been very fortunate in that stance. So, well, I like to kind of just pry into a little bit like what, has made you successful. So like, what are just kind of some habits and routines that you just do on the regular? Like, hey, I know these are the things I got to do to win every week. And what is that, is there ritual things or whatever? And,
in real estate, it's very, and this is something I preach day in and day out to the guys in my office is like, look, you can't get deal tunnel vision. And I call it that because guys will get one big deal that they're working on and they'll just focus on it and think about it all day long.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do any business development because they're just focused on that deal. Well, now they got, then maybe they get 3 or 4 deals. I'm like, look, guys, you can't pull off of business development constantly. You have to do it every day.
Yeah.
And as soon as you pull off and then you get some deals done or some deals die and you look up and you ain't got nothing else in the pipeline, that's a scary spot. And I know because I've been there.
Yep.
And so that's something that I try to really push myself to do is like, hey, every single day I make some kind of moves on business development.
Yeah.
And I push the guys to do that too, because that's one of the biggest factors. You can't let yourself get complacent. You can't let yourself get deal tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Because like I said, there's also deals where you do everything right and you got them a home run. Everything is perfect. And then some external factor kills the deal and you thought you had it in the bag and you didn't. And you know what I mean? You can't count your chickens before they hatch.
Dude, that is so true. That's that was the broker that just left JLL, Bob Knackle. Mm-hmm. He's like, hey, you need to plan out. You need to schedule time in your calendar 2 weeks in advance for prospecting time.
Yep.
And I mean, that's exactly what you're
saying.
Get
it on the books and make yourself do it.
You talk about, external factors. So yeah, there was that's a very, how the external factors can come into a deal. I had the 3PL client that I represent. It was, we were looking at a deal. We fully negotiated the lease. They had their client fully on board, huge roofing manufacturer. Building is 330,000 feet. Building had a rail sleeve coming into it. Building next door is receiving UP. Owner's like, yeah, this building's rail serve, no big deal. And I get a hold of UP just to be like, hey, I just want to confirm this is rail serve. And they're like, oh yeah, that track's been dormant for more than 6 months, so we don't consider it rail served. But you can do a 10% study and we'll let you know in 6 to 9 months if we'll serve it. And I was like, here's the client. Like I told him the roofing man. I mean, like these people are enormous. Like, it was GAF. So it's like, hey guys, like this is one of your big clients.
Yeah,
like,
you should figure this out.
Can we get this figured out? They wouldn't do anything. They were just like, no, you have to do a 10% study. It probably costs $30,000 to $40,000, and then we'll evaluate the track, and then we'll tell you if we'll serve the property. Man, it's $330,000 foot deal just vaporized like that. And
classic,
and I'll never forget. I would say probably about 3 or 4 months later, I was sitting in an airport and I look up. I'm like at the bar waiting on my flight or whatever, and I'm watching TV and like UP or BNSF or like they have a commercial on TV like advertising like we're moving America. But I was like, why are y'all spending money on advertising? You literally have a monopoly. Like, I'm just like I'm the only person in the whole room thinking that, just raging, thinking about this 330,000 foot deal that just totally collapsed on me. But that's so true, man. Like I've seen a lot of guys that will have a bad day. Deal falls apart. They're like, I'm going to go home for the day. I'm like, bro, you better get on the phone. Like, go get on the phone and just get over it. Like, it's going to happen.
You got to have thick skin, man. You got to have thick skin.
So, no, but that's great. Dude, without a doubt, prospecting is... It's something that you have to consistently do forever. I almost feel at some point you have to prospect your clients more than you do new prospects, because I swear when I call some of my clients, they're like, oh, where have you been? I'm like, well, did you have a real estate need? They're like, no, I just wanted to talk to you. You know what I mean? And it's so, you
got to follow up and you got to stay consistent with that. And I think that's what's one of the unique things about our business is we stay so involved.
Yeah.
Like pretty regularly with our clients. Like we're constantly talking to them and sending things and, new articles and something that came out like, hey, you should check this out. Or, hey, this law just got passed in LA. It's called the indirect source rule. And you're going to be taxed for every truck that comes to your building. It's going to cost you about 85 cents a foot a year in additional cost. You need to be budgeting that in. Things like that, because the more that I can stay on top of what's going on in the whole country from that front. And it's just 3PL news, right? There's all these different things that, all of these different laws and things that pop up in different parts of the country, but it all affects 3PLs because they got buildings everywhere, right? Yeah. So we stay up to date with all that stuff and try to share it consistently with their guys and keep them up to date. But that's how we continually touch them and stay in touch. So.
It's a great way to continue to provide value. And then, it's like, oh, hey, by the way, I was going to call you this week. We need a 200 and, Kansas City or wherever, to Miami, so.
Just can't tell you how many times it's been just a random follow-up about sending something over or whatever. And they go, hey, actually, I meant to call you. We hired a new COO. I want to introduce you to him. And he's got this customer that just like they're beating our door down and we got to get some more space.
Yeah.
And he wants to take us into New York. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. Let's book some flights. Let's get out there.
Let's go. So, well, do you have a favorite book you've read or something like that that's kind of
I always go to How to Win Friends and Influence People because it's just like, as a broker, just in life in general, man, that's a book that my dad gave me when I went to college. Kind of laughed at it. Don't read books. I'm not reading a book. Finally one day I sat down and read it and was like, holy cow, this book is incredible.
Yeah.
I gave it to all my buddies too, and give it to the guys when they come in my office. You give that book to them. It's just it's a powerful book, man. You can learn so many different things. I've read it so many times back in, you flip pages and things that I highlighted, and I learn something different every time I read it, or it hits different at a different time.
Yeah.
It's just it's a really powerful book for people to read.
What's something you'd tell your younger self?
I felt like, as my younger self, I've always kind of just known and felt like, hey, I'm gonna do something pretty cool. Like I'm gonna grind. I'm gonna figure something out, and I'm gonna make it happen, right? And I think I would just tell myself, hey, you're right. Keep going. Don't give up. Don't quit on anything. And my dad was that way too. He was like, we don't quit in our house. You start something, you're going to finish it. And he was just that kind of farmer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He just beat that into my head at a young age. And I was so blessed to grow up with my dad like that and teaching me and my brother that way.
Yeah. It
paid dividends, man, in college, just going through two-a-days and going through, scout team, and I think positive attitude is a really big thing my dad taught me too, was, you control your attitude, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You control how you're going to react to certain situations. And I'll never forget being on scout team and just being so happy to be there. I mean, just like happy to be out there, you know what I mean? But then the guy next to me, highly recruited freshman on scout team, and just lollygagging around, and his just body language and attitude. He didn't want to be there. He wanted to be over there. Yeah. And I don't blame him, but I was also like, dude, you get an opportunity here. You're still on film. The cameras are still watching you right here.
Yeah.
You can still impress the coaches by what you do right here.
Yeah.
You're going against some of the best receivers in the country. Let's have a better attitude, man. Let's pull it together. Let's get these guys some work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's something that I think everybody should really, really think about is just their attitude, how they react to certain situations, and a positive attitude can really change the outcome of a lot of different things.
Yeah, no, it can. It's also disarming in tense situations, you know? Yeah. So, well, what's something that no one knows about you, or something really unique about you that not most people know?
Oh, good question. I'm kind of an open book.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I feel like most people can know a lot about me just by being around me, because they can kind of, I'm just an open book. But I make blueberry muffins just about every night. And
every night.
I'm a big blueberry muffin
That's
fan.
what I was looking for. I was looking for something really awkward like that. That's awesome.
I like to think that I make the best blueberry muffins on the planet, and I make them every night. And my buddies come over sometimes, and they're like hanging out, and I'm like, "Hey, got to try my muffins." And they're like, muffins. I put a lot of bran in them. You know, I love bran, big bran fan.
Yeah.
And hot butter, milk. Oh. Gets the people going.
Oh, that's funny. So your grocery list every week is all the ingredients to make blueberry muffins. So do you make them and eat them that night, or you make them for the next morning? I guess you probably want them that night.
I have a little bit of a. Sometimes I just get like the Betty Crocker ones, and then I just add some stuff to it. But sometimes I'll do it from scratch. My wife is like all into sourdough. You know, she's like feeding her sourdough every day, which. You know, to each his own. But it's kind of funny to watch, and she loves it. So like, she's always, every night, she's always like, "Hey, you know, I gotta make something with this or throw it away." And I'm like, "Well, let's make some muffins." You know, so we make something. You know, it's always a little bit different with how we make them, but just a big blueberry muffin fan.
Well, whenever you have a hard day at brokerage, you just come home and have a nice blueberry muffin, and it all washes away at that point.
Yeah,
so.
Don't worry about anything else. When I'm sitting there with a glass of cold milk and a blueberry muffin and hot butter. Ooh.
That's awesome. Well, man, I'm excited to see where Growe goes. It's I've always thought it was such a genius idea, the way you've kind of cornered that market, and
thanks, man.
I think you're going to be really successful. I mean, you're already very successful, but I think it's going to be everything you imagine it's going to be, and so, man, I'm really excited to see you grow.
Well, hey, I appreciate it, man. We're just putting one foot in front of the other and continuing the climb. Yeah, and that's what's fun about it, man. Every day's a little bit different, and just keep grinding. But I appreciate you saying that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, that's all I got for you today. We're gonna definitely have you on again. Get the update.
Yeah.
And but man, thanks for coming on. I think a lot of people will get a lot of value out of your story, out of the way you think about things, and so I'm really excited to have people hear this episode. So.
Man, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Summitt.
Thank you.
Soon.